Hello friends, hope you are doing well. Welcome to my review of the GoPro Hero 8, the latest GoPro in the lineup of GoPros. It is also one of the weirdest products because of the lineup, but it's also a positive, so let's get started. Let's just kind of look at what this product is trying to be. Obviously, we know what GoPros are, but what's the deal with this one not having a silver version or a white version? That's interesting. So what can this do? First of all, it's got the Hypersmooth 2.0. It's got a Time Warp 2.0, meaning, it's better than the 1 version. It's got a 12 megapixel camera. It can do 4K 60 frames. It can also do 1080p with 240 frames. You can get those slow motion hits. It's around an 8 times slow-mo, but who's counting, right? You can also do 1080p live streaming. That's really cool. It has a touch screen this time around, and it has 10 meters or 32 feet of underwater ability. So first of all, it is waterproof. You can basically have it out of the case, and it is the way it is designed. It does not need a case. Now, interestingly, it also has super wide photo and HDR capabilities, and it has built-in mounting, which is actually a bit of a pain, which we'll talk about in a second. And it has live burst. It can also do and capture raw photographs and raw information. So with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the product a little bit more. First of all, it is the classic design. The lens and sensor is on the left. It has a little screen here, a black and white screen to tell you if it's recording. On the back, you have the screen. It's a touchscreen. It's very small, but the design of the buttons in there in the software is quite intuitive to the point where you don't need to really pinpoint. But we'll talk about the software in a moment. It has a removable battery, my friends. I am so happy about this. Pull down the tab, it pops out, and you can actually take the cover off, which is also really good, just in case people like to break things. The fact that you can pop this off and not sort of break the hinge there, really positive, really good thinking on GoPro's side. You can then pull out the battery with a little tab on the side like so. It's not a big battery, and I'll talk about how long it lasts in a second. But apart from that, you've got USB charging there, and you've got the micro SD here. Now, putting this back and talking about the battery life. First of all, at 4K 60 frames, this is only going to last about 2 hours. So it doesn't really matter what size of memory card you have. I have one here that has 8 hours of recording on 4K 60. The battery will only last 2 hours. So if you're doing something for longer than 2 hours, you need to have spare batteries. And in fact, the special bundle here came with a spare battery. I have 3 batteries now, because I bought another extra one for $30. It's not much, and that's in Australian dollars, but this whole thing was about 500 Australian dollars. So keep that in mind when purchasing this, because there is no silver version and there is no white version. But I'm very happy about that, because when you dissect a product into multiple categories, I think it kind of derails from the value of the product and derails from the quality they can give to your customers. In fact, one of the biggest things I found with the old version is that people used to buy this one, buy that one, which one's right for me? No more. You get one, and this is the specs that you get. You don't need to do massive decisions, and if you want to get the older ones, you can still get them. I think it's a good move from GoPro, but I still would like to see the very small GoPro without the screen on the back and that can fit in, a little box. I think it's much better because of the size of this, and if the battery is not removable, that's okay too. I just want a smaller GoPro. Now, because of that, obviously all the attachments will work with this. There is a media attachment for this device. I didn't get it. I don't think it's worthwhile because the microphone on this is actually really good. And here's a video of my tour of the studio. You can see that the audio is actually really good in a room with no noise. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to just share the news, and if it's a different video, maybe a review video, I'll be putting in B-roll, which is basically a recording of the let's say the keyboard I'm reviewing or the speaker that I'm reviewing, and help you visualize what I'm hopefully speaking about, and all makes sense. But if you want to have some very specific sounds, you might want to get that attachment. It looks like this. It's a bit more expensive, but if you're just doing some videos, maybe you're walking out in the outside, you could put a little bit of a furry cover there. Furry cover, I know, but it'll stop the wind from getting into the microphone. Now, moving on to the attachments, you have this little built-in attachment. You can take out these what I would call wings that turn into the standard GoPro attachment thing. And also when you screw them in, they don't seem to connect very well, and you have to really tighten it to actually have it hold, because I feel like if you don't tighten it, it goes loose. What seems to happen is that it's just over tightening it and it's still loose, and I don't really like that. But it could also depend on the attachment that you're using. If it's a third-party attachment, you might have some troubles. The ones that came with this were okay, but I still had to tighten it more so it wouldn't just flop around. My only concern is that this is kind of flimsy. I just don't know if it's going to hold. This is replaceable, but you also have to have special screws to do so. I'm sure you can get the parts spare from GoPro. Now, I'm really happy with this implementation. I think it's a good implementation. It removes one extra thing that you have to use for your GoPro, the little skeleton mount for it. It's great, and you can mount it at any point in time. You don't need to have that. And that used to break a lot. Like, it's very flimsy. It's plastic after all. So I think it's a good move, but I think it can be improved with the solidness or maybe even the thickness. If they made it a little bit thicker, those little pins here, I think it would be a little bit better. Now, I'm still a little bit salty about the fact that they removed the ability to connect your Apple Watch to this and, press record. But what you can do is by pressing the record button at the top, while it's off, it'll actually start recording straight away, and you'll hear the noise, and you just tap it again and it'll turn off after 10 or 15 or 5 seconds, however long you set it. And I think that is probably the best implementation, especially for me. When I was out snowboarding, I could tap it, off I go, and I would be recording what I'm doing. I could tap it again and it would turn off. I don't have to worry about where it's set, because it'll remember what type of setting I used before, and it'll just start from there again, as long as I don't touch anything on the back of the screen. Of course, it also has a voice control, which I just can't really fathom using. I think it's already embarrassing for an amateur or somebody who's not actually good at doing things to do, "Hey GoPro, turn the recording on." I don't think it's as useful as it would be. I think the button is actually a much better solution, and at least I won't embarrass myself when I keep saying it, and all the people are watching me, "Ooh, he's gonna do something cool," and then I bail into the snow. GoPro, start recording. GoPro, stop recording. GoPro, take a photo. Now, one thing that might concern some people who are pros is that the glass here is non-removable. You'll have to replace the whole front fascia to actually remove this glass. So if this cracks, you're kind of screwed, but at least it protects the lens inside. I'm sure GoPro has replacement parts. So Hypersmooth, is it actually any good? Well, I wanted to test it out by taking this on my bike. Here's the results. You can see it's actually quite smooth as it rides on. This is Hypersmooth on. Now, one thing I want to say, it doesn't affect the actual quality of the video, but it means you can't use the ultra wide, super wide lens. You have to go one step down. And the reason for that is because obviously at the limits of it, it uses the cutoff of the area of your video to then stabilize it as it goes. I'm very impressed that the whole stabilization happens live on the device. It just proves how powerful the chip inside here is. Very impressed. I think if you don't have Hypersmooth, you're going to be missing out a lot. Because even if you chuck this in Premiere, the hypersmoothness or the smoothing effect that you have in Premiere is definitely not as good as something that is happening live. Alright, let's talk about negatives, because this is the biggest pain I've had ever. It cannot play back 4K 60 frames on the Quick software, the software that comes with it. I've been trying to deal with support for over 2 weeks with responses like, "Oh, just reinstall the app. Oh, just restart your computer. Oh, you need a better graphics card." I mean, look at that. That's a ridiculous conversation to ask. The computer can obviously play it back on VLC. It's just the Quick software that can't play it back. So far, I've had no fix for it. They've said to use all the software, which I have installed from the link provided, and it still doesn't work. It is choppy playback. It is unusable. So if you buy this, load up your 4K 60 videos onto your computer after the fact, onto Quick, and you want to get some of maybe the speed or the gauges that come with this, because yes, it captures your speed gauge and GPS, well, good luck, because the video won't play back at all. So So this is more of an issue with the software support rather than the device itself. This is a standard GoPro. We've seen it all. The good thing is that it's the top end one you can buy right now. It is also not separated or split up into different versions. GoPro 8, that's it, you're done. There is a max version for even more pro-ness, but I will even ignore that because the price is ridiculous for the general consumer.
So what's it like to use? Even though this is the black version, the pro version, it is actually very easy to get started with your first video, and people who have in the past found previous firmware versions of the inbuilt software to be too simplified or not pro enough will find that this is not only simple enough to use for beginners, but also gives you all the options to change the desired settings as required for a pro user.
Now, creating little custom versions of what settings I want for the camera have been super easy, absolutely intuitive this time around. Very happy with that. I can set multiple versions of how I want it recorded. If it's narrow, wide, super wide, hyper smooth on, hyper smooth off, different colors, different white levels, everything worked really well and it was really easy to change. Now, with the fact that I can just press this, it was a bit of a set and forget. You didn't have to stress about it. You set it up once, then you press the record button and off you go and do your super cool stunts. So I think this is probably by far the best overall camera from GoPro, but it is also the black version, which is expected, so comparing this to a silver one or a white one is a little bit unfair, but when everything comes together, you get this. You get a very good GoPro Hero 8. Except the software. The software is absolute trash, and if there's anything left to improve, it is the software. Do something better with it. If you're gonna support 4K 60 frames, why aren't you supporting it on quick? Why isn't it working? If you're not going to support it, just say no. But let us then export the gauges separately. Let us do something with the metadata that we capture through the GoPro. Because there's other softwares, there's paid softwares that already do that, they can extract it, but GoPro should provide that software free with the purchase of a GoPro. I think this is a really good device to get with a gimbal if you're gonna do things like video diaries or anything that's two camera. Holding it like this with a wide angle is really good, and the microphone is good enough to use straight away from within here without having to load up a separate microphone.
Now, you're more than welcome to spend $130 on a media mod pack, and then, well, you're gonna get great sound and you're gonna get a few extra attachments like a light attachment. The only problem is your action camera is now not waterproof.
Now finally, price. $530 right now. It has had a few discounts. You also get a bit of a bonus special bundle, but it is very expensive. I think the value of this is about $350 to $450. I think $530 is a bit pushing it, especially because there's no lower version to sort of separate it. I think the fact that they've manufactured one version of this device and it's the same case, it's the same mold that they use for every single version, I think it should be a lot cheaper, especially because they're not manufacturing 3 versions of the latest 8. I think the price can be lower, it should be lower, especially now with the market that has been flooded with a lot of different types of action cameras. But if you're looking for the premium, you're looking for something that works straight out of the box, this is going to be it, and it's going to hit 4K 60 frames and HDR photos. Alright friends, thank you very much for watching. Hope this helped you make a decision about this product. It is particularly expensive, but it is fun to use nonetheless. Now that we're not traveling, it's a bit concerning, but when it all sorts itself out, hopefully you'll be able to use your GoPro out there. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the latest GoPro Hero 8. I'd love to see what your thoughts are and your use cases. Obviously, I've just put it on my bike and gone snowboarding and done a bit of a 2-camera video with it. Some people might use it for different things. I'm looking forward to testing this out with also a 3D printer to do some time-lapse. And of course, as you saw the time-lapse before of the cleaning robot, that's also interesting. Friends, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you guys in another video. Bye!